Alright, in this lesson what we're going to do is we're going to cover backgrounds. There are a couple of styles that we can use to change the background of elements on the page. You can do this to paragraphs, to tables, almost anything can have a background, but we're going to focus today on changing the background of the body tag, and what that'll do is effectively put a background on the whole viewable area in the browser. Before we get started, I'm just going to show you the page that we're working with, plain white background right now. Some images we're going to use that I stole off the internet. I used them from a free website. Just do a quick search in Google for free web backgrounds or something like that. And I got this background here. We're going to use a smaller version of the Yosemite picture from a previous lesson, and then we're also going to start out with a solid color. So let me go to the code, and we're going to start with changing to a solid background color. We've used background color style in previous lessons, but we're going to formally introduce it here. This can be done in an embedded style. We could do an external style sheet, but I'm going to go ahead and just do an inline style here. And I'm going to start with my background dash color, but I need a style tag for a style attribute. So style is equal to background color, colon, and then the color I want to change this to. Your book covers how you can use color with CSS. You can use one of the pre-named colors, which is what I've done a lot in these demonstrations. You can use a hexadecimal value if you have a very specific shade you want. There are tools online. Just do a search for hexadecimal color picker or something like that, and you can find the code for any color you can dream of. Or you can use an RGB value. But we're going to keep it simple for now. We're going to go ahead and just use a straightforward named color. So while I am saving this and going over for you to take a peek at it, I want to talk to you a little bit about backgrounds. Let them live up to their names. Your background should stay in the background. If you're using solid colors, you want to have really high contrast between your text and your background color. So if you have light backgrounds, be sure and use dark text like I've done here. White text or orange text would be very hard to read on this yellow background. And the same is true if you have a dark background. You want to make sure you have light text, and don't forget those link colors too. If you change your background to black, don't forget that those visited links, unless you style them as well, will turn to dark purple and will be almost impossible to read on that black background. Okay, so that's a solid color. I'm going to go back to the code, and instead of using a background dash color this time, what I'm going to use is background dash image, and this is going to allow us to put an image in the background. By default, whatever image we put in is going to tile. It's going to start in the upper left corner of the browser, and as long as it has room, it will repeat itself until it runs out of room. And we can control that, but I'm just telling you that's the way it's going to start with. So we're going to use that blue background file that I had to give it a little bit of texture. Since we're using an external file here in our style sheet, we have to tell the CSS that it needs to go get a file. And the way we do that, or the syntax we use, is we type URL that tells it needs to go to an address and get that. Since our files are all living in the same folder right now, we can make a relative link. So in this case, I can just type in the file name that I'm going to use, and it'll make a relative link to that. Notice that the file name itself is enclosed in parentheses. That's just the grammar or the syntax that the CSS uses. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'm going to click back to the browser and reload and let you see that. And I'm going to give you another warning. When you use images as backgrounds, that texture can also make your page harder to read, so you need to make sure that it's a wise choice when you choose a background. On this one, because the background's a little busy, I would probably need to either bold that black text, maybe change the color to a light color, although with that white in the background it's going to make it a little messy. I might need to increase the size of the font to make it bigger. But if you try all those tricks, your page is still hard to read. You might want to abandon that background or try something else with it, because you don't want to make your page hard to read. That's what people are there for. All right. So that is the tiling. Notice there's one version of it, and then it repeats itself and it repeats itself and continues on until it runs out of space. All right, but we can control that. Like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background image back to the Yosemite smaller image. Oops. Now this is a horrible choice for background. Let me show you why. Not only is it real busy, but there are very few colors. If we choose a light color, then it's going to be hard to read in certain parts of the image. If we choose a dark color, it's going to be hard to read. So this is a bad choice of a background. But we can do some cool things with it. We can have it repeat in different ways, or we can have it not repeat. So I'm going to go back to this code, and I'm going to add the style background repeat. Now the default of that is to repeat, but you can tell it no repeat. And what that'll do is that will put one copy of the page by default in the upper left corner of the page, and we can control that. We'll do that next. But another thing that you can do that can be kind of cool is you can make borders with your background. Instead of no repeat, you can tell it to repeat -X, and it causes the image to only repeat across the top of the page or the x-axis of the page. And you can get kind of a cool header look or even a border look if we do the opposite, which is repeat Y. And I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to change that to repeat Y. So you can still use your cool little border here, and you still have some readability problems, but what you can do is you can come in and set the margins of the page to be beyond the width of this image. So I know for a fact that this image is 200 pixels wide. So what I could do is I could come in and add one more. This is margin from our last lesson, and we can set it to be 201 pixels, and it'll move everything off of the margin 201 pixels, which will allow a little bit of room between those things. All right, we have a little bit of problem. We probably want to do a margin left because we've got given ourselves some margin here that we don't want. We've got some margin over here that we don't want. So going back to our code, we can put in margin left and go for have more of the effect that we're looking for. So this is our background. We just move all of our content off of it so it's still readable. All right, that is the repeat option. I'm also going to show you how to position it. I'm going to go ahead to position it. I'm going to go ahead and change this back to no repeat, and I'm going to take out that margin. And what we're going to do, remember the default for this is if I do no repeat, it's going to put one copy of the image in the upper left-hand corner. If I don't want to do that, I can choose to use background position. Now there are different ways to do it, but I'm going to show you the most common way to do it. You can use two directions at a time. You have a vertical alignment and you have a horizontal alignment. So I can list two directions. I can do top center, and that will put it horizontally at the top, vertically at the top and horizontally in the center of the page. So let me show you what I mean. Notice it's not separated by commas, colons, nothing. It's just top, space, center. Give it both directions. And when we save that and reload, you can see the one copy of the picture is in the top and the center of it. And just to show you one more example, which is a little bit more common, is instead of top center, is to have it both vertically and horizontally centered. So you use center, center, and it puts the background right in the middle of the page. This is a little bit more useful when you have pictures that are a little bit bigger than this and aren't so vibrant. I'm going to do an advanced example in a later lesson that shows you how to change the transparency or the see-throughness of these things. That helps a little bit as well. All right, One last thing I want to show you before I go back to the code. I want you to notice when I scroll, and there's not a whole lot of scrolling on this page because I don't have a lot of text, but notice when I scroll the content, the background scrolls with it. If we want that to change and we want it to stay fixed and have the text scroll on top of that, we can add one more style to do that. So I'm going to change the background dash attachment property. Scroll is the default. That's what we just saw. If we want it to stay where it is, then we give it the value of fixed. So I'm going to do File, Save. I'm going to go here, reload it, and now as you can see, when I move the text, the background stays in place and the text kind of scrolls over it. So those are a few ways you can spruce up your page using backgrounds. Remember, these things work on all elements, not just the body tag, but it's commonly used on the body tag. I do want to reiterate that warning. Make sure that your background doesn't ruin your page and make it even harder for your users to use the page. So in the next lesson, we're going to wrap up with just a couple of random styles that are kind of fun or might be useful to you. And then we'll bring a lot of it all together in one advanced example, and then we'll move on to forms.